What's going on there, YouTube? Another report here for TNTV News now. I'm going to do this little video here. I don't know if everybody's heard about it, but about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago, there was a North Korean soldier who's on active duty on like the border guard, like the most elite North Korean soldiers in their military. I guess he had enough, and he escaped, jumped in a Jeep, drove a couple miles down along the DMZ. A bunch of people were looking at him. There's videos online, go into that. I guess, if you guys would like, here on TNTV, we'll do a more in-depth video of how he actually escaped and everything. But he drove the Jeep down there, past all the guards. They were shooting at him. He jumps out of the Jeep, does a dash across the only area, like the only area of demilitarized zone, like the joint security area where the North and South meet and do like their little somewhat nice to each other meetings and stuff. I've never actually been there. I wanted to go, but, had issues that, wouldn't allow me to go. My commander's being a fucking prick. So there's an area where he ran across and they were shooting. They shot actually from north to south, like across the DMZ. And that's a huge violation, all this stuff. He got shot like 5 times. He hit the corner and fell down next to a wall and, apparently dying, full of holes, bullet holes. In the South Korean joint security area, would be better than living any type of, even as a, elite soldier in North Korea. But, he was some South Korean military guys crawled up, picked him up, or no, they didn't pick him up. They dragged him to a helicopter, and then a Black Hawk helicopter swooped down and grabbed them, which are these people right here. Let's see, from left to right, we have Chief Warrant Officer 2, Nathan Gum, Pilot Chief Warrant Officer 2, Eric Tiro, Co-Pilot Specialist Carol Moore, Crew Chief, Sergeant First Class Gopal Seen, sorry if I get that wrong, Flight Medic and PFC Karina Lopez, Radio Operator, posted at Camp Humphreys, South Korea, Thursday, November 30th. And so I read the story here. It's a South Korea soldier, the U.S. medic who treated the North Korean defector, shot several times while fleeing across the border. This is a Stars and Stripes article. You could find this. Fleeing across the border, didn't think the man would survive. To the hospital, he said Thursday. Sergeant First Class Gopal Singh was part of the 4-member military MEDIVAC crew that flew the North Korean soldier in a helicopter to the joint patrolled area in the demilitarized zone in the hospital in Seoul, South Korea. Singh recalled that he was so worried that he said a prayer over the wounded man before they began the 22-minute flight at a top speed of about 160 miles per hour. Quote, I remember thinking this guy was probably going to die in the next 15 minutes. He told the Stars and Stripes in an interview at a hangar at Camp Humphreys. The flight was expected to take at least 20 minutes. The 2nd Combat Aviation Brigade MEDIVAC crew didn't know they were carrying a North Korean defector who was no longer uniform until after they returned home, although Singh had suspicions after noticing how malnourished the guy was. The defector, who had been identified only as a 24-year-old with the last name of O.H., was severely wounded by gunfire. During his November 13th escape, he drove a military jeep as far as he could, then ran across the border to the only area where the troops of the two countries face each other, which would be the demilitarized zone where the little blue buildings are at. He collapsed after being shot at least 5 times by his former comrades who gave chase while firing automatic rifles and handguns, which under United Nations commands are said to be a violation of the armistice that ended the Korean War from 1950 to 1953, which is when the actual hot portion of it was. It's still going on because it hasn't ended, but it says South Korean soldiers from the UNC Security Battalion dragged him to safety. American medics with the battalion did their best to bandage him up while rushing him to a nearby field where he was medevaced. The team was waiting for him. Quote, they did a really good job of treating him on the ground, said the Pilot Chief Warrant Officer 2, Nathan Gum. And then he says, but I heard the medic's voice. It's bad based on how he said it. He's always so cool and calm. Now he was like, this is serious. This guy's dying. The South Korean trauma surgeon in charge of the defector's case, Lee Cook-jong, has become a local celebrity by providing television updates about the patient whose condition improved enough that he was moved out of the hospital intensive care unit to a general room at the Ajo University Hospital in South Korea. but the quick actions of the American medics on the ground and in the air were critical in keeping the North Korean soldier alive until he got there, officials said. Kim Jae-young, a trauma program manager at the hospital, said that the MEDIVAC team did everything just right according to the so-called golden hour principle. The period after an injury, which is prompt medical treatment, is crucial in preventing death. Moreover, they got him to the hospital quickly, she said in a telephone interview. A lengthy patient evacuation can cause death to any patient bleeding so much, even if someone performs good first aid. Big Needle. This next article is called The Big Needle. The crew had just returned to Camp Casey. This is the helicopter crew now. A base near the heavily fortified frontier that divides the peninsula after a more than 3-hour training mission where radio operators of PFC Karina Lopez told them to stand by for a real mission. This is before they knew what was going on. After initial confusion about whether the team was needed, Lopez got a call at 4:04 p.m., which would be 16:04 for you military peeps out there. And an hour after the events had begun to unfold, the team took off. 5 minutes later, that's when, and then this is now one of them talking, that's when I started calling the hospital, trying to figure out which hospital they were going to take him to, said the 20-year-old from Raleigh, North Carolina. Sign and his teammates had only basic information that somebody had suffered a gunshot wound to the torso, the joint security area, but that was enough for concern. And now he says, I was in Iraq and Afghanistan. That's what you expect there, said Gum, the 37-year-old pilot. Here you'd expect a concussion or these other types of missions what we'd have. Not a gunshot wound to the torso, so it was surprising. It took about 7 minutes to get to Camp Boniface, the base near the JSA, where more than a dozen people met them carrying the wounded soldier on a stretcher in a chaotic scene. He says, we had to kick some people out of the helicopter, said the crew chief, Specialist Carol Moore, 25, of Lenoir, North Carolina, adding that there was only room for 2 escorts from the security battalion. Sign 39 of San Antonio said he immediately spotted signs that he had a lung was in danger of collapsing, so he did a needle chest compression with a 3.5-inch needle, probably pretty big gauge too. He also worked to stop bleeding from hemorrhaging, so he just took the needle and jabbed it into his chest, so that his lung won't collapse and save his life. It's very, it's not for the squeamish. Just thinking about that kind of makes me hurt, but I'd be glad to have it done. The defector, who was in and out of consciousness, asked for water at one point, but Sign said he couldn't have any because of the nature of his wounds. As Sign treated the patient in the back, the pilots pushed the Black Hawk as fast as they could. The original plan was to travel about 138 miles per hour, but they decided that they could increase the speed to about 160. And now he says, this is absolute maximum we could do. The Chief Warrant Officer 2, Eric Tiro, the co-pilot, he said he was doing his best to ignore what was going on in the back and avoid being distracted, but he couldn't help hearing the screams, which turned out to be efforts to keep the patient awake. The helicopter is pretty loud, so when you hear screaming over that noise, you know something serious is going on. They're extremely loud even if you're anywhere near them. The crew also worried about the weather because rain was in the forecast, but fortunately it didn't start falling until after the mission was complete. 30 minutes more and probably wouldn't have been able to do it, Moore said. Next part of the article says, like a movie. The helicopter landed on a helipad between 2 buildings at the hospital in Suwon, south of Seoul. Gum of Winfield, West Virginia, said the hospital is a familiar destination for the crew, which was assigned to the 2nd Infantry Division's 3rd Battalion, 2nd Aviation Regiment, General Support Aviation Battalion. The pad is right there in the middle, he said. They block off traffic, and they come running right out there. It's impressive. He said it's like what you would see in a movie. Tiro, 30, from Annapolis, Maryland, said that the crew had flown to the JSA a couple of days earlier as part of training. I remember thinking at that time, we'll never fly up here again. Little did I know. The unit conducted 45 MEDIVACs from February 2016 to February 2017, including 19 north of Seoul, 26 south of the capital, and over water into Northwest Islands. But members said the mission usually involved non-combat emergencies such as appendicitis or vehicle accidents. Yeah, that's what it says. Appendicitis is that's weird. Signed, a combat medic who did another stint in South Korea 2011 to 2012 and served in Iraq in 2007, said that he was relieved when the patient made it through the flight. He called it the longest 22 minutes of my life. It's truly a miracle. He was fighting all the way, Sign said. In addition, he would like to meet the Defector someday, but just knowing that he is okay is a pretty good reward. Stars and Stripes reporter Yoon Kim Chang contributed to this report. So as you can see, that was a little bit longer than I expected, but that's initially like what happened, like when the whole thing went down, like the news goes off and everything. That's what happens when you don't see, like that's what people that have regular, I guess in the military, you're a medic, you're, you know, a crew chief, you're, you know, this or that, like not like the glorious who you see in the movies, a combat medic, until something like this happens. And, you know, you got to swoop down and, you know, save this dude. And then on the next video I'm going to do, you're going to see how messed up this guy was. Because apparently, you know, the doctor that's, you know, they're pulling the bullets out. They're pulling out, you know, 10 and 12 inch, you know, worms in this guy's stomach, round worms. They're not flat worms. Some reports said flat worms, but I saw some pictures. They were round worms, and it was pretty disgusting. So, like I said, I'm going to try to do that in the next video. Stay tuned. TNTV News.